Good morning. My name is Chaplain CH Walton. When I think about my favorite therapy, I think of that song, Raindrops on Roses, Whiskers on Kittens, Solutions for Clients. Those are a few of my favorite things. So what I'm trying to say is that my favorite type of therapy is solution-focused therapy. And the reason why I like solution-focused therapy is because it is an effective short-term approach for getting people back on track. And what I mean that is that it focuses on the future while not giving too much attention to the presenting problem for the client. And what's great about solution-focused therapy is it can work in an individual setting, a couple setting, a family setting, or in a business model setting in the context of leadership. The founders of solution-focused therapy are Steve D. Shazer, Kim Berg, Insu Kim, Tom Dolan, and Eve Lipchick. It was started back in the 1970s, going to the 80s, and it was birthed out of the brief therapy movement, and also its philosophical underpinnings is postmodernism. Postmodernism basically argues that there's no overarching meta-narrative or no absolute truth, and that everybody's story is valid. And since everybody's story is valid, everybody has a solution to their own problems. So the goal of the therapist is to come alongside the client during the journey. And when he's coming alongside the client during the journey, he has a genuine interest in that client, and he comes from a position of I don't know, of humble humility, as not as the expert, but as the co-creator of the solutions with that client. And what it does is it equips the person to be independent and not to be dependent on the client for everything and anything. So the structure of solution-focused therapy is basically the miracle question, spelling questions, asking the homework question, and also making basic observations about the client. I'm ready for question number 2.
Now that you've answered or summarized your chosen approach to family therapy, what makes your this approach to solution focus distinct from other approaches to family therapy?
The biggest thing that stands out is that it's client-centered. And because it's client-centered, you're basically asking the question, what is best for the client? And you're equipping them to articulate what is best for them. And because also it's client-centered, it focuses on the solution in terms of that the client is not the problem. Because a lot of times, other therapies focus on how the client is the problem or the client is not separated from the problem. So there's a power differential there where you're over the client under you. And since you see them as a problem, it's easy for judgment and disdain to creep into your counseling and to look down on them. So it's really seeing that the client has potential for a better future.
Okay. Demetrius, what drew you to solution-focused therapy?
I first came in contact with solution-focused therapy back when I was a young buck chaplain, back in the early 2000s when I was going through chaplain officer basic course at Fort Jackson, South Carolina in the year of 2006. And we had a class on that. And what piqued my interest about solution-focused therapy was that it takes a kind of a weight and a burden off your shoulders, because as anybody who's done pastoral care and counseling or any type of counseling generally, sometimes you get overwhelmed because you cannot experience every dimension of the human condition. There's problems I never encountered. I've never been a drug addict. I never cheated on my wife. You know what I'm saying? I never committed incest. I never killed somebody, And once you come across these situations that might be overwhelming or perplexing, it puts the ball back in their court to help them create their solution. Okay, for example, the miracle questions ask the question that if the problem was not present, what would be different? And it has the therapist, you have to stay silent until they come up with an answer. And so it gets them thinking about what can be the solution.
So I take it you're a firm believer that the individual has all the answers for himself?
Not quite. I'm still a Christian. That doesn't change about who I am, because solution-focused therapy can work in an area of pastoral counseling. What's great is that the miracle question really deals with the question of God, really, because I believe that He's the miracle maker. And I believe that even though the individual can have some answers within themselves because they are the expert to their own problem, I do believe that the counselor does have to speak up sometimes and offer, according to biblical truth, because some things is not really just a environmental problem or a chemical imbalance problem. It's a sin issue, and I believe that Jesus is the ultimate solution to all of man's sin. He's the ultimate solution-focused therapy.
Okay. Demetrius, can you give us an example of which counseling session you used this approach and you saw the usefulness and described how it was used?
Sure, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question, Ed. It's a very thoughtful and insightful question. Probably the one that comes to mind was recently I brought a counseling session to an end after 3 to 4 sessions with a couple. The husband was a prior service veteran who just got out 2 years ago, and the wife is a current soldier assigned here to Fort Hood who is getting out in the next few months. And like a lot of couples, they were struggling with the issue of communication, intimacy, respect, and the question that came with the presenting problem was, how can we communicate better? And the way I use solution-focused therapy, I ask what was it like before you guys had a conflict in your marriage? What was communication like? And that was an important question because it gets them to think. And also, I don't know what it was like back in the past. And they started to reminisce how it used to be good. And then it led it into the miracle question, because we're trained here at the Family Life Chaplain Training Center to ask the miracle question up front. So I asked them, if you were to go to bed tonight and a miracle was to take place in your marriage, where you were to wake up the next day where you guys were communicating well, what would that look like? And they started to explain to me what would it look like. And I used the board here and just started listening out one by one. And as before you know, they had like 5, 6, 7 things what the marriage would look like if communication was taking place. And then I asked the question, then, if that was to take place, what would you be doing different right now? And they listed some more things. And then by the second session, when they were first like really far apart in the first session, they were sitting close together. They were looking each other eye to eye. They were holding hands. They were laughing. And they were taking to the homework that was given to them. I was able to use the scaling question to find out what were the resources, set markers for success, and how that they could only go up. And it was amazing to see how the solution-focused therapy worked, because I went from the traditional model where it was problem-centered, where you start chasing the symptom, but with solution-focused, you don't chase the symptom, you chase the solution.
Okay. All right there, Demetrius. Can you describe and it appears that you've already described that key intervention associated with this approach, but in conclusion, how would you describe this solution-focused therapy for you in one sentence? Even if you can't roll it up in one sentence, how would you describe it for yourself?
I'm going to use a verse from Scripture. In Scripture, Jesus said that with man is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So I say with solution-focused therapy, miracles become real.
Okay. So in your final conclusion in reference to solution-focused therapy model, you believe that utilizing this model and taking a couple through the entire process, that they're able to complete a counseling session or process, and for them to look back and see that a miracle has taken place in reference to them from the first day until the conclusion of the counseling process.
Yeah, most definitely, because solution-focused therapy is a brief therapy model. So what I mean by that is it shouldn't go past 6 sessions, and during that session you usually see progression. And because it's very open-ended and you're more of a facilitator than the expert, it allows them to imagine and create that miracle for themselves and start taking the necessary steps in that direction. So like anything for the work, you have to work it to work. You have to be invested. Because I tell couples, even in the very first session, if one is checked out or if one is not fully engaged in the process to see their marriage getting better, then this will not work. They both have to want it. And they have to want it more than I can, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to lose sleep over somebody else's failure. But I will pray for them, I will work with them, and run it just as hard, as long as they're going to run as hard with me, to have a successful journey in their marriage, in their life.
Okay there, Demetrius, it seems like you've given us a idea of solution focus for yourself within a nutshell. Anything in conclusion you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'm gonna get crazy here, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but ultimately I believe that Jesus is the solution. Because man has a problem. That problem is called sin, and Jesus is the only one that can take away our sin and set us on the right track. That's the ultimate thing I wanted to say, because I'm a passionate heart. I'm Jesus all the way. Jesus free, 100%.
Cool. Demetrius, thank you for sitting in with us today and giving us a bird's eye view into your counseling therapy that you prefer, and that's been solution focused. Thanks once again.
Thank you guys for interviewing me.